Do you think AI will elevate the HR function or expose weak HR leadership?
I think AI will always, well, what I've seen over the past few years is that, AI is seen as a silver bullet, right? So it's going to be solving everything, throw AI at everything, and it's going to solve all our business problems, it's going to solve our people problems.
So talking about the organizational design, so this is another thing that you mentioned, organizational design. How do you balance the agility with structure? Because some organizations, there's so many levels of structure and then becomes very, very slow. Hello guys, this is the 10x AI again, the show where we explore how AI doesn't replace people, rather it amplifies them. So I'm your host, Julius Neil, and in our episode right now, I'm with Wael Khoury, the founder of Lopez Khoury and Associates. Wael, can you tell us about your experience when it comes to HR transformation and then going into AI?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Julius, very much for having me on today. Just a quick introduction about myself. So I'm the founder, like you said, of Lopez Khoury and Associates. We're a human capital consultancy based in Doha, Qatar. After 20 years of experience in the industry with big four firms and other industries, I founded my own consultancy. And our firm really specializes in HR transformation, digital transformation, learning, leadership, change management as well. And all those are important because, with AI advancing and transformation, digital transformation advancing, there's a human capital element or part of that that is really misunderstood or really not really paid much attention to or neglected by many organizations. So kind of starting off from that point, I'm glad we're having this conversation because we know AI is really big. It's been around for a while. It's going to continue to advance and adapt very rapidly. One thing I think we're getting to more and more is really how important it is to really look at the fundamentals of the people behind it, how people are involved in it, you need from your HR departments, your strategy departments, and other areas as well to make sure AI is done correctly, ethically, right, and make sure you have the right people components in place to make sure AI is successful.
What really interests me now is the region, the Middle East region. Like for example, in the US, everybody's going into AI transformation. And how is it now in the Middle East? Is moving fast, or is it only in the UAE or some other areas in the Middle East?
No, across the Middle East, very, very big, very fast, quick, very keeping up to date in terms of conferences, conventions, discussions on AI, its uses being integrated across so many facets of organizations, across many different industries as well. So it is extremely important. A lot of work being done around that, which is fantastic and great. I think there needs to be, like I said, more work around not just the technology part of it, which is really great to adopt. There are funds and resources to implement AI in different capacities. The idea is, for me, I like to step back a bit and really look at, okay, fine, what are we using AI for? What is it helping us enable, correct? What is it helping us drive for the organization, for society, for all industries and sectors? And that's where I think there has to be better communication and alignment between different stakeholders within the AI project that you're undergoing, whether from the company or government sector, and really bring in the people to look at all aspects of AI when you're doing this implementation and making sure it's one, yes, serving the business and what needs to happen, but also making sure you're taking into consideration the skills required. Are you ethically adopting it properly? Are you giving the right training? Are you managing the change that has to happen when you're transforming from a way of operating one day to a new way of operating the second day? Correct. So these are elements which I think continuously need to be more and more focused on.
Talking about the transformation, what does real transformation is measured by, and what it really truly means for an organization trying to go from traditional way of working into the AI?
Look, I think it's, for me, that's kind of something what we believe in as a consultancy, as Lopez Khoury and Associates. The real transformation, the real change, when it happens, it has to stay. It has to last. You cannot implement something or design the best thing in the world and then kind of put that in place and plug and play it sometimes, right? The moment the consultant leaves or the moment you step out, everything falls apart. Or people there don't really understand not just how to use the technology to make their works easier. They really have to be part of building this transformation. Really be involved in planning, organizing, developing, and implementing any tools that you want in AI or digital world as well in these organizations, because you want to make sure they're bought into it. You want to make sure they understand what their role is. They have to be very comfortable going from, let's say, the old way of working to a new way of working, correct? And these are very important things to have in place to make sure that any transformation, let alone an AI transformation, is done correctly.
I agree, because I think a lot of the organizations now look at AI as a technology first, then people second. So how do you think should an organization tackle this? Because a lot of the people will say, okay, if it's AI, it's going to be technology, and then second people. And I think based on your on your information and the insights that you're giving us, you're thinking about like this is more on the human capital first, and then transforming to AI.
It's both. You're right. It's multifaceted. You do ultimately, all businesses are run by people at the end of the day. So you have to bring in, you have to buy in from senior leadership, from your C-suite. What is initiatives you're undertaking or transformations you're undergoing? You have to bring in the specialists on the AI or digital front or your techies to come in there. And of course, they're giving their expertise in those areas. You need to bring in obviously finance to make sure you have the right resources and looking at the ROI of these initiatives that you're doing. You bring in human capital or your HR function to look at the skills that you have currently to implement this project and sustain it, right? Do we have the right leadership capabilities to drive this forward? Do we have the right training in place, or can we develop the right training programs to make sure we have the right skills and we're upskilling people to use this new technology? Are we embedding this technology correctly with our current company culture, or are we looking at changing our company culture to adapt to the new ways of working? So these are all things that have to come together from the get-go in the planning phases of these transformations to make sure.
What is the typical, questions that you get from the, CXOs, the CEOs or CTOs about transforming their organization from this traditional way of working into the new way of
You get a lot of questions on, bringing the right resources in place, which is definitely, the right question to bring in terms of the expertise, the technology, the resources, etc. But really, from the people side, we have this conversation, and I make sure if those questions are asked, that I'm asking the questions of the people who are going to be affected by this transformation, not those who are just championing this new initiative that you're undertaking, not necessarily only the transformation projects that you're undergoing, but you're also bringing in, the right change agents throughout the organization, the people who are your allies across the company who are helping you drive this, keeping the communication in place. You have to have a very strong communication plan throughout this implementation or project or change that you're undergoing through multiple phases, potentially over a long duration. Some of these things take a long time to implement. Then you make sure you have those people in place and they're trained to manage your day-to-day communication, alignment, training, answering questions, supporting people who are in transition from using the traditional ways of working to using AI to supplement the work that they're doing right now. So you make sure you have that infrastructure in place correctly, and people are aware of how they can lean in on that team and have that team reach out to people to make sure they're driving that success.
currently, what are the type of organizations that comes to your firm and ask, well, can you help us transform or change our ways of working into the AI world because we wanted to be future ready? What type of in terms in the Middle East, is it still oil and gas or other also industries as well?
Honestly, it's across different organizations. There's a lot of oil and gas, airlines, financial services, I would say, banking and related services as well, government also as well. So those are probably the biggest ones I would say that are very much involved in this area, driving things forward. But you do see some other potentially manufacturing, for example, a bit. Say those are probably the top 4 or 5, I would say, were very much invested in this area at this time. But that's rapidly changing, so across.
Based on your experience and transformation for programs, why do you think some of the transformation programs fail? As a result of, is it a result of poor planning? Is it the result of less financial resources? Or is it a multivariable stakes?
Look, transformations fail for many different reasons, right? So definitely what I've seen is initiatives that were maybe half thought of, half cooked. They're not sure really why.
I think a lot of organizations are like that.
Yeah, right. You get an initiative from a department and they have this idea of what they want to do and they sort of go full steam ahead. Really think of, okay, why do you want to do this? It could be the latest fad. It's a trend you see the world going into. Why do you want to do this? Why is it important to you? What are the results you're trying to achieve from it? What are the problems you're trying to solve with this transformation or implementation that you're trying to do? That's the first question. Second of all, do you have buy-in for this? Have you discussed this with upper management? Is this coming from you as a department or a stakeholder? Is it coming from top down in an organization? And do you have the right support for that internally from the right people who are not just going to go, sign off on it, but also are going to be supporting this throughout the transformation and throughout the change management program that you're running, right? So do you have that support internally? And yes, of course, you're looking at the financial resources, capabilities, etc. Are you using those, from your own organizations, or do you have to bring in people from the outside to support this? And what is the long-term vision for this? Is this a standalone project or is it part of a larger transformation that you're going into? And again, bring in the human capital department that you have within your company to look at the people aspects of things, right? In terms of
You
behavior,
have
learning.
you have a very unique, background. You work across three regions. How does that shape your philosophy and people and change? Because work in Canada, you work in New York. It's different, right? In the Middle East, it's also different culturally. And
Yeah.
how do you navigate on that?
Yeah, obviously, I've lived in here for 10 years. I studied and worked there as well. I worked around the region here also and clients around the world. It's, the leading practices are one thing, which is great. I think some of the biggest differences we see is in terms of maybe speed of adoption. There's cultural differences, how fast people adopt to things, how business, ideas are discussed. And some countries or some, cultures are very slow and they like to think things through and eventually cut down the line, and some people just want to go very straightforward, black and white. Okay, these are the points, and let's get it done
Yeah.
and go ahead. So you adapt to these and you get used to these as you work across different company cultures and country cultures. Right? So
In
yeah,
terms of strategy and execution gap, what are the biggest disconnect you see between strategy and execution?
everything's in execution, right? So Julius, honestly, strategy it can be you have to put the right strategy in place, and that has its own ways of doing it correctly, right? But then really the biggest failures or obstacles sometimes or mistakes you find is in actual execution. It's all about execution at the end of the day. How do you execute this strategy to the reality on the ground, not just theoretically? Who are the people in charge of executing the strategy? Who are the teams that are involved in this as well? Who's leading it? Are the roles clear and who's executing the strategy? Do you have the right measures in place in terms of not just KPIs, but how are you assessing that this strategy is being implemented in the right timely way? Is it being done? Are you meeting all the goals that this strategy is supposed to be doing? Are you measuring the results? Are you getting the results that you want gradually, based on the strategy's plan? Those are very, very important to do. And really, it's about the people who are executing the strategy. That's what it comes down to. And it's very,
I think you have a very good point there because in my experience in previous organizations, a lot of the leaders, the top management, are underestimating the culture when driving change. Do you see this also in the
absolutely.
in the industry right now?
Absolutely. The culture of the company is so, so key. The leadership of the organization is also very key in implementing anything, right? So you can come in there and say, are we doing this as a checkbox exercise, or do you really want to drive correct, sustained change? Do you really want to change? Do you really want to implement this? Do you know why you're doing it? Are you really looking to get these results, which you're saying you want to get, or are you looking at something else? What are the ultimate results you want to get from it? And how realistic are you? Because I tell organizations very black and white, if this is what you want to do, and I've seen their culture, I see their leadership in place, and I say, you have some big risks in place. This will not succeed because of one, two, three, and four. Unless you fundamentally change these things or you have these things in place, you can have all the best projects and the best technologists in place or the best AI specialists in place. This will not succeed because you have a culture issue or a communication issue or a leadership issue. And if you don't get those right as a fundamental base, you will not be successful. The likelihood of success is going to be much, much more diminished.
Okay, so when you tell that, in the
Yeah.
face of the CXO or whoever is in the top management, and you tell them, I mean, subtly, not brutally, that hey,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have a communication problem. I think whatever you're driving that now, it's going to fail because this, and this. How do they handle that?
It's a hard discussion to do that, right? Especially if you talk yourself out of work sometimes in doing these things as well. But you want the best for your client at the end of the day, and you want to see success. So you're not telling them that you're not going to be able to do it. You're just highlighting for them there are certain risks or things in place that you have to take care of and look at the right time to do this and why we're doing it. Or potentially you have to do some other work in place first before you jump into this larger project that you're going into, whether it's on AI, for example, which is what we're talking about, or any project that you're going into, and have the right structure in place in terms of leadership and communication and change management, right? So those are extremely fundamental. And look, when I approach clients, we speak very openly, very straightforward manner, very straightforward manner. And most of them are reasonable. They want the best interest for their company. They understand they're running these businesses. So they do understand when you talk about it and they appreciate it, right? They appreciate because you're not coming in there and telling them, hey, yes, we can do this. No problem. Let's sign off and let's go ahead with it. Because down the line, some things will come up and then you're going to go back and say, I told you so, I told you so that. So the idea is that to have these communications up front, the client does understand and appreciate these, okay? And then you find a way forward, knowing there could be, okay, you mitigated these risks, or you eliminated certain risks, and that's the way to go forward on things, or you say, put things in place and come back in 6 months, and you have a much more successful project. And I think clients are smart enough to understand and listen to those things, and many of them
Anchoring
anyway.
anchoring on that, how do you make, accountability visible in this type of programs? Because it's such a very new program, a very new system. How do you make accountability visible and unavoidable in organizations?
Look, ultimately, leadership is all about accountability, right? Accountability is so, so important. This has to be part of the company culture as it's progressing, right? You have to teach all that and then make sure your organization is living that. They're walking the talk. Your leaders who are running the organization are accountable themselves. You're holding yourself accountable first, right? If you're a CEO or a managing director, you're holding yourself accountable on a day-to-day basis in front of your people and the company that you're leading, correct? Private or public or whatever. And when you do that, you tell people to be accountable also for themselves and accountable to their departments and their stakeholders as well. So I think that's a cultural part, of course, that has to be ingrained and continuously reinforced and developed. But then when you set up this transformation or AI program that you want to implement, for example, then you're going to have to build that into that project scope as well, right? Who's accountable for what? Who's responsible for what in this project? And then hold them accountable. And who's going to hold them accountable to it?
So in your experience, is it always about the financial benefits of having AI, or is it being future ready, or is it being a very dynamic company? What is usually the reason for that?
Look, companies exist to make revenues and profits, right? So that goes without saying. But you cannot quantify everything with a. So yes, there has to be a financial metric in place, but you do have to look at the overall benefits in terms of efficiency, freeing up people's time to really focus on the value add that they can give to the organization, where you can automate things. It all comes down to really using AI in a smart way to free up people to do things better, right? Or to focus on more strategic things that add more value to the organization that they can do only alone as a person. And that's how you have to look at the ROI sometimes, right? You cannot always quantify it into a dollar sign. However, that being said, there always is an ROI that comes up, and there's a trend to show that yes, you did get a significant financial advantage if you're implementing these transformation projects correctly. And if you're actually embedding into them the right leadership, the right change management programs, the right transformation components, and the right stakeholders to drive the success of the organization, again, it's tied to the overall company strategy, its mission, vision, values altogether, correct? And you're looking at the long-term progress of these projects that you're doing. So once you tie in all these together, you're going to get that success.
Usually, when you make a program for a company, is it more on the training on the AI tools or AI transformation, or is it the whole program? Like, how do we streamline HR, recruiting, talent acquisition, and then going into the manufacturing, production, and then supply chain and all this stuff, the whole
Yeah.
value chain?
It all depends on where the company is, the stage of where they're at, right? So some company already could be very mature and they have the right people in place and they've got this program they want to implement, but they need some help with the change management element of it. Stakeholder management, communication, maybe a bit of training, right? So you can come in there and support this program and work alongside in parallel and embed that change management program on the ground, have people on the ground literally with the implementers to make sure that things are progressing in the right part. Or sometimes you could come in and you're looking at the whole part of it as well, managing that whole project. Or you could come in and build the foundations for it, right? You want to implement a certain thing or automate a certain aspect of your work, whether it's in any department, but you haven't even developed that department fully. So go in there and develop what needs to be done, map out everything that needs to be developed or your programs, and then okay, fine, where do we bring in AI or digital tools to help accentuate and actually drive this whole program forward. So it could differ from company to company. What's important is that you have this communication up front to understand, okay, fine, what is your role here? And is any role missing in terms of driving this project forward?
Do you think HR will play a big role when it comes to this transformation? Or it's only technology side? Because it's always like technology or people, technology, people, technology, something like that. What do you think?
Always, always. HR will always have a role. Human capital will always have a role. It's never
But you
only.
know, in reality, sometimes they wanted in the news, you know, right? The
Yeah,
HR is the HR the ones being laid off first after after the AI transformation. I see a lot of news on that, and I believe that it's wrong
yeah,
because I believe also, as even if I'm a very technical person, I believe that HR, human transformation, culture comes first. Whatever transformation that they're going into, whether it's AI, whether it's lean, whether it's whatever, you know, it comes to the culture of the company, and it's centered around the HR. And then they are the ones also screening all the people who will, you know, fit the culture of the company, right?
yeah. Well, yeah. HR again, because HR traditionally has gone when HR really started evolving post World War II, right? They were much about documenting, payroll and personnel and record keeping. And then throughout the decades and generations as HR has evolved, with civil rights more in the 60s, then you're looking at more focusing on unions, maybe in the 50s, etc. In the 70s, it was more, again, looking at civil rights, again, and other laws. HR has evolved, really, and HR has to be, and it's always been a conversation about human capital. It constantly has to, make sure it is part of the strategic arm of the organization. It always has to be have a seat on that table, as they say, quote unquote. It has to be a driver of the culture. It has to help implement and facilitate, the company's strategy and implement on the ground. They're kind of the facilitator amongst everything that is going in there within the company itself. And yes, no function within a company can work on its own, whether it's IT or finance or marketing or HR. They all have to be very well integrated. This is where it comes down to, again, communicating between all these different functions. IT can have all the systems, all the technology. It's going to take people to run it. It's going to affect people when it's actually implemented. It's going to take people to lead it and make sure it's trained and across it all. So you cannot separate the two. And people are the specialists in IT, right? There has to be that communication across all these different functions to make sure anything is implemented correctly.
What do you think is the future of a high impact HR function from now and beyond?
Look, I think HR has to be the voice for the company culture, its people strategy, its values. Definitely. And again, this ties into the point we're talking about in terms of making people redundant, for example, when if you're implementing technologies or AI. HR's role is to reskill or upskill people to help drive this AI that you're driving within the organization, correct? So you're transforming the roles into something a bit more different, correct? There will always have to be a reskilling of roles or reshifting of roles in anticipation of implementation of any technology solution or AI, etc. And that's what HR's role is, to anticipate this, be part of the conversation when these programs or projects are being implemented, and have the plans in place to reskill, upskill, transfer people, or recruit new people into the organization to help the new way of working. So that always has to be a fundamental part of it.
Hypothetically, if a CEO asks you, how can HR drive revenue? How would you answer that?
And it's the way we always answer. I think it's like HR drives revenue by hiring the right people, not just hiring the right people, but attracting the right people to the company through communications, through helping set the company's mission and vision and values, helping making the company an employer of choice, developing this real employee value proposition. How do you attract people to this organization? Is it not just your salaries or your compensation or your total reward? It's your culture, your policies, your leadership style. What is important to employees today is different than what it was maybe important to employees, 50 years ago or 20 years ago, correct? And even different generations value different things. So really HR has to understand, and they do, and communicate that to management to say, okay, fine, we help drive the revenue for the company or the growth of the company through people, which is the way it's always done, right? Bringing the right people in place, developing them, making sure they're contributing the right skills into the organization, training them, retaining them, and then continuing to have them drive the mission of the organization forward. And HR can build so many things around that in terms of leadership development and succession planning and upskilling and really reshaping how organizations work from maybe a traditional, very bureaucratic, multi-layered organization to a more maybe squad structure or a structure where they have more of a network style organization where people work across boundaries to ease work. So HR has to be the driver of these leading practices and conversations to help the organization ultimately fulfill its mission.
You mentioned about bureaucracy. So in terms of performance and rewards? How do you design for impact, not for bureaucracy?
Are you talking about rewards and compensation? Or are you talking about structure or altogether?
All together, all together.
Look, again, I think it's yeah, again, it's part of these conversations, right? When you look at organizations, you have to understand what the company exists to do, right? What is its mission and vision, right? What kind of products does it sell or what services does it provide? And really understanding its industry, its position, its size, and where it is in terms of that maturity scale. And you take that and you understand, okay, fine, what are the issues that it's having right now? Maybe things are working fine. That's good. There's ways of testing that. And if you see certain issues with slow down in processes or communication or duplication of work, or it could be 100 different things, right? That's where you come in and investigate. And then you come in there and kind of recommend and work on the right structure that will help this specific company implement its mission and implement its goals. So it really is on a case by case basis, really understanding what are the problems that are there, what are the surface problems, what are the real embedded problems that you see, and how do you find a solution to that? And that solution could be partly technical or technological. It could be partly from an HR side. It could be financial. And then on the HR side, okay, is it structure? Is it process? Is it leadership? Is it culture? And you solutions for each one of these. So it's always multifaceted.
Yeah, so talking about the organizational design. So this is another thing that you mentioned, organizational design. How do you balance the agility with structure? Because some organizations, there's so many levels of structure and then becomes very, very slow.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. I mean, you got organizations who have a huge bureaucracy and structure in place, and you really have to balance. It's all about balancing risk, authority, and again, speed of processing things, correct? Right? What gets delegated, what gets done at certain levels. So that's always a function of, the tasks that are there and the functions that are within the company itself. Yes, agility. Yes, organizations have to be more and more agile. Again, that comes down to, how do you structure these organizations? They're very agile. You don't traditionally work maybe with kind of multi-layers, but you bring in people together on certain project basis of things.
How do you think will AI transform when it comes to this type of design, when it comes to agility and structure?
Yeah, no, I think on AI front, I mean, there's multiple ways of doing it. I think with AI, definitely there'll be uses for AI to help structure organizations and really look at, okay, fine, who interacts with who in an organization? That's one kind of cool. There are tools out there to look at how do different positions of organization interact with each other. How do they communicate? What impact do they have? And that's really a kind of a nice way of looking at more of a network structure, which is something I'm very big on as well, I think, right? In terms of driving the conversation on networks and network organizations. And that's, you constantly have to look at that and then fashion the right organization that will help fulfill that mission. And again, with that comes buy-in from top management to do this and drive this. And again, shifting that over time, managing the change around that as well, all extremely, extremely important to make that a success.
So, in terms of the leadership capability, because we are now in the transition period, the emergence of AI, there are still leaders who are, receptive or they don't like, technology. And then there are people like us, we are forward thinkers. We know that this is the future. We should start now instead of, coping up in the future. So what must leaders unlearn to succeed in this AI era?
Very important question. I think that leaders have to be aware that, time flies fast. There's always leading practices and technology is always evolving. The world is moving faster and faster. If you're not on board, you're going to be left behind as an organization. And if you can't do it yourself, make sure, and which is usually the case, because you're not a specialist necessarily in all the technological advancements that are happening or an AI specialist, but you as a leader of an organization ideally would be wise enough to understand and see that this is a trend. This is not just a trend, but this is where the world is going. We need to adapt and make sure we are ready to use AI technology in a smart way that helps us specifically as a company and bring in the right people to help us do this. Whether you have them internally, that's one thing you need to check. And then if not, then bring them out from outside the organization or bring in other companies that can help you do this, drive this ahead. Because if you don't, then the company is going to be left behind and the CEO is going to be accountable for that as well.
I agree. I believe that culture is the invisible operating system of an organization, that nobody knows, nobody sees that, but it's the invisible operating system for us to be able to be a successful organization. So cultural change is very hard. So do you think AI will amplify the cultural change faster, or it will diminish because everything will be like, okay, everything is will be there, everything is stable, we have the foundational, and then we don't need that much culture anymore. What do you think?
Culture is going to be there no matter what. AI is around. It's always going to be very important. It's going to affect how you implement AI and continue to develop your organization and your people with AI, through AI, etc., right? Or implement AI in your company or with your customers and stakeholders. Always going to be very, very important to do that. And culture is set, yeah, it's set by the people and the people you bring in and by the leadership, right? Leadership has to be the one, with HR's help, might I add, setting the right culture within the organization. And again, it's not just about the words or, those posters you hang on the wall in the lobby of your company, really walking the talk,
Yeah.
implementing, showing it on a day-to-day basis in large events and large projects that you do, and in day-to-day interactions, and commending people who follow that culture, and really calling out people who don't fit that culture, because it is detrimental to organization if we don't have the right culture in place. And that's always going to be there, and it's going to drive any project that you do, whether it's in AI or not.
In my experiences before, I think a lot of the problems comes with the communication from the middle management going up, and then from the middle management from down. So a lot of the feedback is being filtered out by the middle management because they just want to to just praise whatever programs that our top management are doing. Yeah, everything's doing good, blah blah blah. And there are a lot of problems down, and this erodes the cultural change that you wanted to do. Do you
Of
think
course.
AI will be able to diminish that communication problems between the middle management to up, and then from the grassroots, from the frontliners to the middle managers?
That could happen if you don't have a good communication or knowledge gathering, and if management's not really in tune with what's really happening on the ground within the company. So yes, you do have to address that. I'm sure, and yes, I agree, there is ways for AI to have a role in helping human resources, helping leadership get the right information, make sure they can analyze that information itself. They're asking the right questions. They're synthesizing this information to really understand what the situation is, where the pain points are, where the issues are, and putting the right solutions in place to make sure that they're being addressed. So yes, definitely AI can help with that. And it's just part of the puzzle though, right? It's just a tool to help you get that information, but you have to act on it through different ways. And you have to make sure you don't underestimate and forget the human elements of implementing these, again, culturally, leadership wise, management wise. All that's going to come down to people. That's never going to be replaced. So you got to make sure you have that in place. And yes, you can definitely use AI in different ways, gather that information, and make sure you use it to develop the solutions to minimize any miscommunication or misalignment in a company.
Like you mentioned, you work in different regions already. So what are the differences in transformation style when it comes, for example, in GCC or EU or US? What do you think is the difference?
Look, I think that I don't know if there's necessarily the differences to drastic differences. I think the biggest thing I've seen is whenever you want to go through a transformation project, and it's a leading practice across any region that you're in, you really want to make sure that you're asking the right questions, because sometimes the client themselves have not thought of all the aspects that they want, or have not really gone into deeply, why they want to do this. You want to investigate, why have you done any transformations in the past? Were they successful and why? Or have they failed and why did they fail, right? Or were there issues with it? So I think it's really much on the consultant side to do their homework from the get-go to understand what these are, and then really drive those transformations correctly, with the right teams in place, the right elements in place. And that's just a leading practice way of doing things. But at the end of the day, it is people on the ground who are affected or doing this, and
Yes.
that
Yeah.
being very close to the people in the companies on the ground at all levels, that's the critical thing you have to do. And that's where you adapt based on not just the company culture, but the country's culture, regional culture as well, how communication is done, how people interact, etc. And that's where you adapt that part. But the fundamentals are always going to be the same. And that's key to a successful project.
Do you think AI will elevate the HR function or expose weak HR leadership?
I think AI will always, again, it's how you use AI, right? AI is a very broad topic, subject, field, if you will, right? So it can be used for so many different ways. Are you using it in the right way? Are you using it to get the right benefits from it? And not using it as a silver bullet for all the problems, or to say it's going to take care of everything and you're just going to sit back. And that's never going to succeed in any place you are. So I think, smart functions and companies look at AI correctly and know where they can get the most out of it to make the company successful.
If you're an HR professional now in one organization and you see that there are transformation programs like AI, transformation, and you know that in the future that there will be a lot of retooling, training and all that, how would you rethink as an HR manager, HR professional, how would you rethink the skills, the roles, and workforce plannings in the AI era? Because as the trend goes, the more AI the organization adopts, the less people will, the less people in the organization. That's what's happening now, right? So how would you plan for that?
It is happening to a certain extent, right? And again,
Uh-huh,
there's all
uh-huh.
reshaping of roles and reskilling of roles. And anybody as a consultant, going into an organization to help implement a transformation, you foresee that, right? You understand that this is what we need to be doing. This is the actual goal we're aiming to. These are the results that we expect or we're aiming to get. These are the other sub results will happen no matter what, because as a result of doing this transformation. And we understand from the beginning that these are the roles which are going to be affected. Do we put plans in place to make sure that these individuals or departments are upskilled, reskilled, so they can serve a purpose in the new way the company is going to be functioning, right? So you have to plan all that from the get-go, and the right consultants have the foresight to do that in the beginning and not do it retroactively and then, kind of go back and say, oh, here we are today and nobody knows what to do. Let's go out there and start reskilling everybody. And that doesn't work if you haven't planned for it. So you need to do that from the
A
beginning.
lot of the employees now are there's some certain, so they're very receptive. They don't want to, implement AI because they will always think that AI will replace their job. So how do you use AI to empower, not replace those, employees or humans in the organization?
Look, if you're an individual or organization, either your company is helping you or training you on new skills in the AI world. What I would recommend, what people should be doing is themselves self-training, self-educating, upskilling themselves constantly on the way to reshift their core skills or core profession to operate in the new world. I think that's what they have to do, take that responsibility. So they're showing the value to the organization continuously going
If you
forward.
are not, like, for example, if you're just a graduate of business management, marketing, literature, how would you're not a technical guy, for example, how would you, approach your retooling, reskilling? How would you approach that? Will you go into the transformation like consulting, or the big picture guy, or will you focus on the technical side?
Well, it depends what you want to do, I guess, right? Depends on the profession or the position. If you're a new graduate and you haven't picked up those skills or training through your education directly, then, you figure out first what you want to do. Obviously, your profession, what job you're going to going into. And then from there, see what this job, entails today in terms of skills and how the job is being performed today, as opposed to how it was being done 10 or 20 years ago. And then where is it going to be in 5 years from now? And get make sure you acquire those skills, if not through your own university, but acquire those yourselves, right? You're responsible for your own self-development at the end of the day. Whether you do that online, or whether you do it through a structured program in person, through online universities or training providers, or you're doing your own research and learning, all that is on you as an individual to do that, so that you can offer to the companies you're going to work for, or if you're an entrepreneur and you want to offer a service. So those are all going to be on you to continuously self develop yourself and to offer your services to a company. So it is very much an individual responsibility. I see it.
Do you think a branded education of AI still holds a gold standard in the industry, or whether it's a prestigious school worldwide, or you just take online course from this, some, educational engines? Do you think it still matters that I graduated from Harvard, MIT, and all this, or I just, took up some Microsoft seminars or workshops, or, all these courses? What do you think? Is it going to be that much a difference or no?
It's a very general question, I think, right? That we've seen over time. How much do these, not just a university degree, but those high end university degrees, right, from maybe an Ivy League school
Mhm.
or et cetera, right? And not putting that down, those are absolutely fantastic for different reasons. It really comes down to what are the skills that you have, and can you show that to the company or to your own business, right? Or to the company you're applying to. So do you have the right skills that are important? Not just technical skills, which we're talking about a lot, right? But also the behavioral skills, which are more and more important these days, right? Communication, leadership, empathy, teamworking, adaptability, risk taking, all those are extremely, extremely important. Agility, right? These are what's needed these days, because that if you have that and you're strong in those areas, technical skills you can pick up and train very, very quickly on, right? And you can be of value to organization. So yes, your college degrees definitely have a value in certain ways, but can you continuously educate yourself and get the training that you need through different means? Again, there's different ways of checking, what's a credible institution or organization or training you're attending versus another. And then you can lock those out and see those correctly online or when you do your research, and make sure you're actually getting the right skills from the right place that'll actually show results, on the ground.
I think that's also the misconception when it comes to AI. A lot of people are, I can see in a lot of my social media accounts, a lot of the people now, when it comes to AI, they just take all these courses, and they forgot that what you meant. You know what you said about the behavioral skills, because I think it is going to be very scarce in the future, because nobody wants to, to coordinate, facilitate, to have this empathy. You know what I mean, right? So it is going to be scarce in the future, and it's going to be competitive advantage when it comes to taking a job, because technical skills, everybody will have the technical skills, but having a leader, having somebody who has some empathy to make all these people work together and make a program or make a goal successful, it still binds, there is still value on that.
I agree. And again, yes, more and more people are being trained or learning about AI and how specific or how specialized they are in certain areas of AI or not. What is their level of knowledge or skills that they do that? And then it's up to you then as an individual, how do you distinguish yourself from the other ones as well? Do you just know how to do a certain type of implementation on AI and that's it? Or are you just using it for Instagram videos? Or do you really understand that strategy can add more value to the organization? The more value you can add throughout this whole skill set, the more valuable you are to the company, right? And the more they're likely to attract and retain you. So I think it's really important to always
Yeah.
elevate yourself and distinguish yourself
The
from your competition.
follow-up question on that: how would they learn empathy, for example? These things, you know what I mean? So it's not that you can take a course on that, right?
You can't.
Especially the younger generations now, they are very, connected, only always on the cell phone. Imagine having dinner with friends, all of them in the same table. In the same generation, they're just on their phones. In my generation, we talk, we talk
Yeah.
a lot, we catch up face to face. So how would they learn this now? Who is going to train them to do that?
People who are in that world and an organization have to talk about it more and more, and it can be trained, right, or reskilled in a way, right? Really, do you understand what other people are thinking? What is empathy? You're putting yourself in the other person's shoes, right, as they say. Do you understand what they're thinking? Do you understand what they're feeling, right? Do you understand what they're going through overall professionally, for where they are, the projects that are on their plate? Are you really looking at actively listening? These are very important skills, really actively listening and communicating. So these are things that are going to have to be trained. If you're aware of that, then you're training yourself on these, and there's different ways of doing it. Or your company understands that these are very fundamental skills that employees have to have, and they help train on them. And all that kind of stuff can be talked about, right? You can train on these things. You can constantly fine tune these different areas, right? It's not just like it's a trait. Empathy is a discipline. Okay, it's something that you have to actively be aware of when you're speaking with somebody, understand where they're coming from, putting yourself in their shoes, and making sure that you're increasing your communication, that way as well, right? It's really about listening without judging from in the beginning, right? And before reacting to somebody, really see where they're coming from, not just the words that they're saying and coming out of their mouth. So, and that's something you practice. Everybody does it, so it's important for people to work on those areas as well.
In your experience, what are the signs that the culture is silently?
I mean, there's so many things you can look at, I think, right? So I think culturally, I mean, you can see, okay, I mean, there's so many variations to it, right? But I think you can say, oh, yes, we believe in, these are our values, this is our culture. You could say that on our website, you could say that on somebody's wall, but if you walk into the organization, and you can see from the results that are happening, and there's always an indication to that. You can walk into the organization and get a feel for it. You walk into the building, you see how you're greeted, how people walk around, how people interact with each other. Feel a lot of that in the culture, right? You could feel it how the company presents itself internally to its employees, to its stakeholders, to its customers. Um, so those are all key things that are always very easy superficial signs, at least at the beginning, that show that. And then when you look at dysfunctions in a company or not the right results, then you can go in and dig into that and then try and isolate what are the cultural elements that need to be looked at or paid attention to. But there's always a way to dig in there and really find out, what is happening on the culture side. And there's a lot of surveys you could do with employees and anonymous feedback, etc. Right? But there's usually a multi-pronged approach to getting to understand the company's culture.
So if, for example, you have the client right now, so is this what one transformation that your client will thank you for now in the next 5 or 10 years?
What do you mean? Are you talking about a transformation that's
Yeah, so you're coming into the company, you're helping them to this transformation, whether it's AI or other types of transformation. What is it that they're going to thank you for after 3 years or 5 years? That's what we're very thankful about Whale, because this guy help us
yeah.
move from one current state to the other high level state.
Look, I think for me, again, it comes back to our earlier discussion about the foundations and the fundamentals of any company is really getting the leadership right, the culture right, the right type of people into that company. Really look at making sure the company has the right people in place from skills and headcounts and all that, and the right values and the right leaders in place to drive the company forward. If you get all that stuff right, and then everything else becomes easier as you go down, right? It really starts with having strong leaders in charge of the organization and letting people do what they do best, in the teams that are there, giving them the freedom to do what they do best, putting on projects that they can excel in, constantly checking in with them and what's important to them in terms of rewards and compensation and flexibility of work and things of that nature as well. Constantly being in tune with how their days are going and how they're progressing. Do they feel like they're valued in the organization? Do they feel that they are able to contribute strongly to the organization itself? All that comes, again, ties into leadership and culture. And if you have to get that right as a basis, once you have that right, everything else becomes much easier from there.
Okay, so in your roster of clients, what is that one leadership behavior that you think that will predict the success of the sustained transformation? Just one common among the successful ones.
I think it would be a vision that takes into account everybody in the organization. So a vision that you can clearly communicate and make sure it covers everybody in the organization. I think that's one of the biggest things. If a leader can do that and people understand, okay, this is where we're heading, this is where the leader wants to take us, and this is my role in it and how it's going to affect me, I think that's a very key basis to start off from. You get that right, and then you can work from there onto the rest of it. So I think that's very, very fundamental.
Yeah, it's very nice discussion with you. So we're now towards the end of our podcast. So I have this rapid 10x round, which I will be going to ask you 10 questions about you. Only
Okay.
you. So you just have to be very honest about it and answering the question. The first question,
I'll try to be
what's one tool that you actually use every day?
one tool I use every day.
AI tool.
AI tool. Oh man. Really, GPT, I would say. Yeah, definitely. Easiest thing to look at. I use it mostly to bounce ideas back and forth. Do you know what I mean? So it's something that I like to use for as much as possible. But yeah.
What one task AI has already 10x in your life?
Which tool? Hard to say, I think, right? I think there's so many things I use interactively back and forth. I think what I use mostly is having my teams use those tools to really implement the visions and the strategies that I kind of we discussed together to implement, I think, right? I think that's the easiest way. Make sure that they're focusing, using those tools in the right ways. I think that's really important. And again, using that to implement what we want in our organization and how we're reaching out to clients and what we're actually succeeding in implementing.
Yeah. So I think you already answered this one, but I'm still going to ask. What's one human skill AI can never replace?
God, judgment, empathy. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot. There's a lot that can go out there as well. Leadership. Those are all key, and AI will never replace that.
If you could automate one annoying thing forever, what would that be?
Hopefully forever. Oh, there's a long list there. So we're just
Just pick one.
Oh God, man, what was I? I mean, I probably can't use that right now. Obviously, in terms of email management, I would say, I think, right?
Really?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, okay.
There's ways of doing that now anyway, I think, right? But I don't use it as often. I think I like going through my emails. But again, it's one of those where it can be done, but I agree that, I always like to personally respond to messages and
Yeah.
emails as I can for whatever happens and keeping that personal touch there. I'm not into using, necessarily avatars or whatever you will, I think in certain areas. So I try to keep things as grounded and as human as possible. And like you said, talked about, I think we're really using AI in areas which definitely do help the business, but not remove that human element or things that make you or define you personally or as a company.
Okay. What's the biggest misconception about AI right now?
I think what I've seen over the past few years is that, AI is seen as a silver bullet, right? So it's going to be solving everything, throw AI at everything, and it's going to solve all our business problems, it's going to solve our people problems. And we know that's not the case. So I think it's a misconception. And I think many people understand that, but I see a big rush to jump into AI projects without really looking at the fundamentals first, understanding what are you using this for, how do you think it's really going to help, and really checking those areas before you jump into AI projects. So use it smartly, but again, there are things that you will not be able to replace with AI, and you need to solve those always.
What advice would you give someone who wants to become 10x of himself or herself starting today?
Look, it's a lot to do with your own ambition, discipline, your own development, learning, leadership, etc. is all on you. You have to focus on your own growth and development. That's all in your hands and nobody else's. You have to drive that forward to whatever means are available to you. Have the courage, I think, right, to take courageous decisions and steps going forward. I think those are the biggest things I would recommend. Yeah.
What would you tell your younger self about the future?
What would I tell my younger self about the future? It comes very quickly. So I think it's something that, time flies very quickly, don't leave what you can do today till tomorrow. And it's a very, kind of old saying, right? But do what you can today. Time is finite. Get what you can done today. Don't, and then really focus on living your day to the fullest. And it's kind of a bit more of a philosophical approach, but it's really important. Really do what you need to do today, to be more successful tomorrow, and it comes into everything. Habits, behaviors, training, education, the work discipline, what you're doing at work every single morning you come into to do, all that has to tie in.
So, what's one book, podcast, or resource that shaped your thinking about AI or innovation?
This one for sure. I'll give you credit for that one, Julius. Because I get on podcasts and we talk about AI and things like that, right? But I think this one is a very nice podcast, which is very much rounded across all aspects of it, right? And very much tying in your personal experience with it. So I do appreciate that. And this has been one of the most interesting and exciting ones.
So, if you have to bet on one AI trend that will be massive in 3 years, what is it?
You know what? To bet, who knows what's going to happen in a year or two. It's one of those things where things are evolving and we're getting surprised so much. One thing which I hope would happen, I'll turn it around a bit, because the more you see all those avatars and humanized and deep fakes, and not from the deep fake angle, right? But individuals coming out, and their avatars of yourself and etc. That I don't like. And it's maybe a personal decision from my side, a personal opinion from my side, right? So I see more of a trend. That's where that's going. And I hope it doesn't. If there's a way to, in a way, really keep that human element of communication and interaction with people, I hope we retain a lot of that as years progress. So that's how I would put it. Change the question a bit. I hope that trend does not
Yeah, it's good. It's
go
good.
us forward.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. So, okay, in one sentence, what does 10x mean to you personally?
10x in general,
Mm-hmm.
give 10x and you get 100x, So I think it's,
That's nice. That's good.
you can use that now, right? If you like.
Yeah, I can use that now.
Yeah, I think, always give your
That's
best.
great.
Always go into it with something that you believe in, you've got conviction of. Stick to your principles and ethics and all that, but do what you believe in and you'll get, 10 times more back, So I think that's something I believe in.
I agree. So that was the rapid 10x round. It's very nice to have all your insights about this, and then all the discussions that you have. I really enjoyed a lot, especially your perspective on things on the Middle East. This most of the trend coming from AI is mostly on the Western side, but the Middle East is another region that is also rapidly going through this transformation as well. So for our viewers, if they wanted to contact you for your consulting business or anything that they wanted to ask you about the Middle East region when it comes to AI transformation or any transformation in their organization, how they can contact you?
Sure. I mean, one way is on our website, which is lopezkhoury.com. So LOPEZKHOURY.com. I'm on LinkedIn, so that's an easy way to reach out to me. So probably those are the simplest ways to connect.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.